Guys today are neither the mindless, sex-obsessed buffoons nor the stoic automations our culture often makes them out to be. Our community is smart, compassionate, curious, and open-minded. They strive to be good fathers and husbands, citizens and friends. They want to lead by example at home and in the workplace, and to understand their role in an ever-evolving, changing world. This is Minding Men. I'm Brian Pollack, and we're here with Lisa Hickey, a publisher of the Good Men Project and CEO of Good Men Media, Inc., whose goal over the past 10 years has been to spark an international conversation about the changing roles of men in the 21st century, and she's doing it well. Lisa, thank you for joining us at Minding Men.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, I took that intro from your website.
Yes, I recognize the words.
It's just so well written and so poignant and so important. I really feel much of that statement as I learned about the Good Men Project. So much of that statement shines through in all of the work that you are putting up there on that website.
Thank you. We really use that as our guiding light for what we want to do and what we want to accomplish.
Yeah, it's great stuff. So tell us a little bit about the Good Men Project.
So we did start just over 10 years ago, and that was the goal, to spark an international conversation about the changing roles of men in the 21st century. And at the time I thought, oh, that'll be easy. Men would love to talk about the way their roles are changing. And it actually hasn't been that easy. But we're very proud of what we've done. We've grown to 3 million visitors a month come to the website. We have calls with our community, phone calls with the community, like long before Clubhouse was ever a thing. We started these phone calls 5 days a week with community members. We have people who come in and write for us. We've had over 10,000 writers. So often people start by reading the Good Men Project and then say, oh, I want to contribute and be a writer, or I want to come to the phone calls and talk about these issues. So it's not just, articles on the website. It's a very deep engagement with our community that we look for.
Thank you, because I couldn't have expressed that any better. There's no way. And you do this every day. And you know what, I think one of the things you spurred and started, and I think you're seeing, and I'd love to hear about this, is how are you actually seeing men breaking through barriers through the work that you're doing? Does it well, I'm going to stop there. How do you see it? What's happening?
Yeah, no, that's been really the great, amazing thing. So we're trying to break down the stereotypes that have kept men from doing so many things throughout their lives. So being concerned about mental health, for example, or being anything other than the sort of stated roles of, oh, you need to be the financial provider and you need to look great and get all the women and you need to find the one and marry them. And, so we're trying to break through all of those cultural stereotypes, which we think often harm men and society in general, men and everything in between. And so what often happens is sort of the path that people go through is they'll start reading articles and then they'll want to write for us, but it's a long-term journey, right? It's not like someone reads an article and automatically changes. It's a process of saying, oh, this is how things work in our society. I didn't understand that. Now I understand it. And now I'm going to talk about it. Now I finally have the words to talk about it. And I can help others as well.
So what a great point. So the journey of learning about being more complex of a person that you possibly always known you were, and our current culture saying, no, you just have to be black and white, yes and no, this is what you do, and this is how you operate as a man. When you open that door, what do you see these guys discovering?
They discover that they can, like, one of the big things is the understanding that they can have really deep, intimate relationships with a whole variety of people, right? They can have deeper friendships. They don't have to be in competition with everyone. They can have, friends of any gender. They can have meet a diversity of people and really talk deeply with them and develop friendships that last for years. And they can do this on an ongoing basis, and they don't have to be so alone and lonely and isolated. Like, all of that is amazing to see, but that's, I feel like that's just part of it too.
Oh yeah, one of the more difficult experiences for guys is the world of maybe even living in projective identification, where we look at the way guys behave because they've been acculturated to live in a certain way or believe in certain things. And then when they decide, or a gentleman decides that's not for me, there's an immediate dissonance that can feel disempowering. It can feel outlining. It can feel really difficult. And there's no conversation under that, right? So when I hear the Good Men Project does this, and I when I found you all a couple of years ago and just started reading the work that you all do and that you do, I got to say, there's so much information. It's sometimes overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have 10,000 writers, which is incredible, right? I think I have one for my website. So how do you end up putting this together, helping somebody start to enter the world of the Good Men Project?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So we publish about 45 articles every day.
Okay.
And that's just to keep not just, but strategically as a business, it's to keep our level of traffic up so that we can be a self-sustainable business that makes a profit month by month.
Oh.
And I know that's not, but the reason that's important is because it's actually those 3 million people that come to us every month that make the Good Men Project so diverse and so interesting, and that makes the deeper community so meaningful. If we didn't get all of those people coming to us month to month, then it would be the same 10 people showing up on the calls every
Yes.
week. And it's not that at all. You can come to one of our calls and you never know who's going to show up, who's going to be there, what the conversation's going to unfold, what direction it's going to take place. And so I think the level of insights you get once you understand all that we have to offer is unparalleled. Like, a lot of people in COVID said they don't know what they would have done without us. They felt like we literally saved their life. And I don't want to read too much into that, but that's what has been said. Like, they couldn't have survived a year-long pandemic without having people to talk to about these issues.
1,000%. And I can imagine the amount of anxiety you helped be decompressed and calm and stabilized. I can imagine the amount of sadness you have helped. I can imagine the incredible service that you've done to 3 million people. Holy cow, that's incredible. So with that, let's say, I think you may have an example. Can you give an example of what possibly somebody who goes through the Good Men Project, what their experience has been, just to help our listeners and viewers understand, what impact the incredible work you're doing has?
Sure. I can tell a story about Mike Kasden, who has been with the Good Men Project about 6 or 7 years now. And he's kind of a prime example of a journey that one might take as they were going through the Good Men Project.
Yeah.
So Mike met me through a mutual friend, Mark Green, who had been writing for us right from the very beginning. And Mark Green had written a lot about man box culture and the harm it has for men. And so Mike and I happened to meet at a dinner where Mark brought us together. And I sat next to Mike and I was asking him what he liked. And he was like, I like sports. And I said, oh, well, by the way, we're looking for a sports editor at the Goodman Project. Would you would you like to be that? And he was like, well, it's a little soon for that, don't you think? So Mike started, he was one of those people who, once he heard the idea of what we were trying to do, like talk about the changing roles of men and really get deep into those issues, he embraced that fully almost immediately. He understood the importance. And then he started writing for us. He started writing about sports and entertainment and politics. And I think he wrote some haiku poetry. Like he was, it really showed the complexity of who he was as a person, which is what we love to do. And then he started writing about some of his own journeys with mental health issues. And I remember the first article he wrote about that was anonymous because he was afraid to speak about it publicly. The fact that he had suffered from depression in the past. He was worried about the future. He was, he wanted to figure it out, how that fit in and what he could do to take care of himself. And so he gradually became less anonymous about those things and started writing about the more deeper, more personal issues, which again is what happens with a lot of people who join the Good Men Project. They realize as they start writing that they can find a voice that resonates with the community and that also helps them just articulate their own problems and issues that they're going through. Mm. And then ultimately, Mike did become our sports editor. Like we often get people who join in as roles within the Good Men Project because, again, they believe so much in what we're doing that they want to take a more active part. We have people who lead our phone calls or who edit or who help find other people to write for us or to just join in our Friday calls with the publisher and give us advice on what we should do next. So Mike became very deeply involved in all of that. And what was interesting was he had a day job as a lawyer. So in the beginning, he kept those two areas of his life very, very separate. Like he wouldn't talk at all about what he was doing for Good Men Project at his law firm, and he wouldn't talk at all about the fact that he was a lawyer when he was writing for the Good Men Project. But as it went on, they became much more integrated to the point where now he's advocating for mental health issues in law firms as like how do we get this more programmatically into law firms so we can help the people who are under these really high stressful jobs and might need mental health services. So it's just been great to see the evolution.
That's amazing. I'm sure Mike's a wonderful guy. It sounds like he's done some incredible stuff with Good Men Project. When you look at his overall journey, I'm sure Michael would be very much in favor of what you're saying, all this wonderful stuff. I know you probably talked to him ahead of time, which is great. I wonder what healing did you see? What transformation, just having known him before to after being a part of the Good Men Project, which he still is?
Yes. So, and I did explicitly ask for his consent to talk about this. Just to be clear, we're big believers in consent here of all kinds. In terms of healing, it was just the ability to talk about these problems that he had always kept hidden away, and to be able to get the support that it was okay to talk about these, but also to really understand the reasons why men historically have not been able to do that. And so I really think that deep understanding of the cultural pressures, the systems that we put in place in our society that really prevent men from being, fully authentic, fully actualized selves, like I feel like that is healing too. It's not just the personal, oh, I feel better. It's that I have a greater understanding of the way the world works, and that helps me navigate it every single day.
That's a great point. The idea of so many of men going through what we might call a disembodiment in order to act on the world or act on top of themselves or act on themselves in order to live. And when you start to see that you can embody your own validation, your own truth, and see that through, it sounds like the Good Men Project has offered a ton of validation, support, and depth just in Michael's journey. And I'm sure there's a lot more people. When you look at the different services and everything that you're currently doing, can you highlight a little bit more deeper the services that someone like Michael has used? You said you have the phone calls. There might be some other, I'm assuming, just kind of directed editorial. Do you have any types of programs or focus that Good Men Project also offers?
So I want to just make a point that we don't offer, say, mental health services. We don't put healing in our mission. So I just want to quickly make that point. It's really a self-guided journey in a way for people
Great.
who understand that they are lacking something, and they might not even understand what it is they're lacking. So there's the vast library of articles. So we have, I think we're up to 120,000 articles on the website total, but that's over 10 years. So it took us a while to get there. And then there's the fact that almost anyone can be a contributor. So if you want to write for us, you can. You just have to adhere to our editorial guidelines, which are basically no racism, no sexism, no homophobia, that type of thing. But if you're okay with that, then we want you to be a part of it. And the writing process itself has been really good for a lot of people. It's not for everyone, but for people who do embrace it, we've had people then go on to publish books or get speaking engagements, or just, it opens doors that they hadn't even imagined often. When there have been a lot of people who their very first published piece was on Good Men Project. So there's the reading, there's the writing, then there's the talking. So the calls we offer every evening, Monday through Thursday, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, and they are on a variety of topics. So Monday is relationships, Tuesday is racism, Wednesday is just GMP playlist where we highlight a story that's like going viral that week. Thursday is climate change, and Friday is the call with the publisher. So those are places where people can just talk to others, meet others, forge relationships. There have been people who have coming to those calls for, the 9 years we've been having them. The final service that we offer is we have a program for corporations where we go into corporations. Right now they're Zoom calls, but we hope to have them live very soon. And we talk about diversity and inclusion, but we do it again from a broad systemic viewpoint of how do the changing roles of men affect the way corporations are moving forward? How can we get more men involved in being allies to women and people of color and marginalized people? How do we, help both men and women and everyone in between navigate this new world that seems to be changing faster than most people can process that change? So those are the four, reading, writing, talking, and specific training and curriculum in corporations that we're doing.
It's fantastic. I feel like I should just not go get my doctoral degree, and I should come learn from the Good Men Project. It feels like an opportunity to learn. It's like school. There's so many different ways to participate. It's fantastic. The Good Men Project, to me, I know you keep saying it's editorial, and I get it, but it's way more than that. There is an aspect, so much of what's going on, and probably has been going on, regarding male influence in our culture, And the Good Men Project is one of those resources I have found that absolutely gets to the core and comments on it and helps gauge interest in different viewpoints around it. It's not just one-sided. And I think that's important to see as well. When you have 100,000 editorial, you said 100,000 articles or so?
120,000.
120, for goodness. I almost said 12,000. I was like, that's not right. So 120,000, you're going to have differing opinions.
Exactly.
All towards understanding something about being a man in this day and age. And where else do you get that many opinions where you can click in and feel like, okay, I'm not nuts. This makes a lot of sense.
Right.
It's fantastic. And I'm hoping that the influence that you continue to create actually finds its way into more of the dialogue with corporations, news media, as well as other, I come from the clinical world, I'll say clinical approaches, informed research, things like that. In fact, have the Good Men Project ever been tapped to do research or to offer some type of support in let's say, a quantified way?
We haven't. We do work closely with a research organization called Promundo, who has done a lot of research on men in the man box, and so it's more like we highlight the research of others quite often. But that's we do think that's important. We do think research-based studies of what's going on is really important also.
No, I love what you're saying because, to be honest with you, the last thing we want is the guys participating to be researched. They're not the ones being researched. It's the work that you're presenting, which is super important, that everyone trusts the work you're doing. And that's fantastic. I'm really happy to hear that you've been working with that kind of stuff. Okay, where are you going now to end the conversation? Where the heck does the Good Men Project go from?
What is our next act? Really, I think you kind of nailed it just a few sentences ago where you said, getting out there into more corporations, getting partnerships with major news media. One of the interesting things that we've been talking about lately is we feel like we talk about things 2 or 3 years before major media catches on to them. Like we're often talking about things that aren't even being talked about, and then all of a sudden an article will appear in the New York Times 3 years later. And so we want to somehow leverage that so we can get that cycle going quicker. We want media companies to understand that this is what we're doing and that we have a plan and a strategy. We're not afraid to talk about the really provocative, different topics that are important to our survival today. So we're just doing more of that, I think, is where we're headed.
Oh man, yes, please. That'd be wonderful to hear more and more and watch the Good Men Project grow and grow. It's a very necessary dialogue you're creating. The editorial work is fantastic. There's some wonderful writers all over the boards on what you do. And it's not a board. I know I'm probably using the wrong terminology, but needless to say, it's fantastic. And anyone who's listening to this, I encourage you to go to the Good Men Project immediately. What is the website?
It's goodmenproject.com. So all one word, GOODMENPROJECT.com.
Perfect. And thank you so much, Lisa. I cannot tell you how great the Good Men Project is. I think you know it, but I think a lot of other people know it too. And so we're really, really happy to have had you on Minding Men, and I'm looking forward to learning more.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's been an honor to be here. And thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. And this has been a wonderful episode of Minding Men. Thank you, everybody, for joining us from MLTV, Radnor, Pennsylvania. Have a wonderful day.